the first thing which we are going to discuss here is about mitochondria. The first thing which we are going to discuss is mitochondria. Now you know that this mitochondria, it is called as the powerhouse of the cell. It is called as powerhouse of the cell. This mitochondria is also called as the powerhouse of the cell. It is the one which is responsible for like releasing the energy or producing the energy inside the cell. It is responsible for, this one is responsible for producing energy in the cell. Producing energy in cell. That is the role of this mitochondria. It produces that energy in form of ATP. In form of ATP. And the process is called, the process is also called as Krebs cycle. This process is also called as Krebs cycle. Okay. So Krebs cycle is basically the process in which the food is going through multiple stages and in which energy is getting released. You don't have to go in detail of the Krebs cycle. I think none of you are going for NEET exam now. So you don't have to see like how the pyruvate is converted, then what is the citric acid phase, what are the other phases. So you don't have to go in detail of it. What you have to remember from your examination purpose, that suppose in rare case if they ask what is Krebs cycle and where it is present, it is happening inside the mitochondria. Normally they do not ask this. They normally ask about the simple thing, where do we have this like energy production inside the cell. So that happens in mitochondria. That's why it is called as powerhouse of the cell. So mitochondria is the one responsible for generation of energy, and it releases energy in the form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. In form of ATP, this releases the energy. Okay. Remember one thing, if we are talking about this mitochondria, it is producing or it is storing the energy in form of chemical energy. Okay. ATP is chemical energy. ATP is a form of chemical energy. Okay. And it remains stored. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. Adenosine triphosphate, that is the full form. It is a chemical formula, adenosine triphosphate. Adenosine triphosphate. So it is basically a compound. It is basically a compound in which, or a chemical form in which energy is stored. As the cell requires energy, it changes the chemical energy in the form which it wants. Okay. So cell converts ATP in other forms as required. Means as per requirement, this ATP is converted into other forms. Okay. So it is storing the energy. Like suppose that when you are looking at a battery, inverter and battery concept, if you look at this, what it does, it stores the electric energy in form of a chemical energy, and gradually, like when you are using that battery, the same chemical energy is getting converted in form of electrical energy. So here, when our mitochondria is there, that mitochondria is converting or releasing the energy from food and storing it in form of chemical energy. And from that chemical energy, whatever is the requirement of cell uses it. Okay. So it stores the energy in form of a chemical energy, that is adenosine triphosphate. that is adenosine triphosphate. Okay. So this is one thing, that what is mitochondria and what is the what it does. Now there is some very important part with respect to this mitochondria. Normally what you will get question, one of the thing is they can ask you about this part. Normally in EG examinations they ask about this part, that what is called as powerhouse of the cell. So you know that it is very basic, it is very common. They can ask you that in what form it stores the energy. So that form is ATP. The next thing which they can ask you in the examination is, what is this Krebs cycle? Like, where do we get this Krebs cycle? Krebs cycle is taking place inside the mitochondria, where we have this release of ATP. It is called as Krebs cycle. Okay. They can ask you one more dimension, okay, and that is something which we are going to study here. Okay. If we talk about this mitochondria, the mitochondria, it consists of some amount of DNA. This mitochondria consists of some amount of DNA. It means genetic material is also present inside this mitochondria. Some genetic material is also present inside this mitochondria. Plus at the same time, there is presence of, also consists of ribosome. You know that ribosome is the one responsible for protein synthesis. This is the one responsible for protein synthesis. So mitochondria is something which consists of some DNA materials, and it also consists of ribosome at the same time. So it consists of mitochondria and ribosome. Why this is crucial? The significance in the present times. See, when we talk about humans, this is one part of mitochondria. Additional thing, current relevance. The current relevance. There is one thing called as mitochondrial defect. In humans or in any other organism, but here we are talking specifically about humans. In humans, when the reproduction process takes place, in the reproduction process, there is participation of egg and sperm cell. There is participation of egg and sperm cell. Okay. So these egg and sperm cell, they fertilize together to form zygote, and from this zygote we have development of embryo, and from the embryo we have development of child. Okay. So from mother and father, the sex cells are provided during the reproduction. From the mother there is donation of, or from the mother there is transfer of egg cell, and from the father there is transfer of a sperm cell. And this leads to formation of zygote. Zygotes develop into embryo. Embryo develops into child. Okay. Now suppose that if this egg cell, if it is having a defect in the genetic material of mitochondria, that defect is carried in the future generation also. Okay. So what is the one important part? We will see that in detail in later classes also, and even in current affairs you will be seeing it. But to just give you a relevance of this mitochondrial defect, DNA defect of egg cell will be responsible for genetic disorder in future generation. So just in a note or in additional information, you can write somewhere that this mitochondrial defect. Now you may have a question in your mind that why I have written only the egg cell, why not the sperm cell? See, even if there is a defect in the mitochondria of the sperm cell, then also it will get destroyed, because from the sperm only the nucleus is getting transferred, rest all other part of the sperm gets destroyed. Okay. During the reproduction process only the egg cell is there, and from the sperm cell there is transfer of only nucleus. So the mitochondria of a sperm doesn't matter. The mitochondria of egg matters here. And so what we see that this mitochondrial DNA defect of egg cell will be responsible for genetic disorder in future generation. Okay. So this is one thing which we see in case of mitochondria. Okay. So this is our first cell organelle, mitochondria, also called as powerhouse of the cell. Any doubt in this? Any doubt? Any confusion? That what is mitochondria? Clear? Okay. So this is the first part. Okay. Now what we see that most of the cells, okay, most of the cells are having mitochondria. Most of the cells are having mitochondria. But there are certain exceptions. There are certain exceptions. Okay. There are certain exceptions that some of the cells do not contain mitochondria. Okay. So here we have another thing, additional note. There are certain cells. Some cells do not contain mitochondria. So what are those cells which do not contain the mitochondria? Those cells are basically prokaryotic cell. There is one thing called as prokaryotic cell. Like those who are not having well-defined nucleus, they are called as prokaryotic cell. In the first class, I have shown you a figure, although we will read about prokaryotic in detail in later classes also. But what we see that there are certain cells which are having no such mitochondria. One is prokaryotic cell. In human body also, the red blood cells, they do not have mitochondria. They do not have mitochondria. So tell me one thing, like suppose that if there is no mitochondria, so how they will get their energy? If there is no mitochondria, so where this energy formation will take place? Where will be energy formation of without mitochondria? who is the discoverer of mitochondria? See, like for mitochondria, there are a number of people who are given credit, but normally what you will find that like it was first like discovered by Albert Von. Albert Von was the one who first discovered it. But like Sivaran is saying, Altman. Okay, so Altman is like Richard Altman was here, so he named it, or he like properly designated it or called it as like bioblast or something like that. Okay, so Altman is also credited. Robert von Killen is also credited. So there are multiple people. Okay, there are multiple people. That's why I didn't give you the name. Tell me one thing, that if there is no such mitochondria, so in that scenario, where there will be formation of energy? Tell me this part, if there is no such thing. Okay, if there is no such thing, ribosome is protein factory. Okay, you will find that energy formation, in additional note you can write this, energy formation or energy can also be produced in cytoplasm directly. Energy can also be produced in cytoplasm directly. Okay. So if there is no such thing as mitochondria, then what we will see, that there will be like direct formation of energy within the cytoplasm. So this is our first cell organelle, mitochondria. Okay. Now coming to the second part, the second important cell is lysosome. The second important cell is lysosome. So we call it as suicidal bag of the cell. We call it as suicidal bag of the cell. We call it as suicidal bag of the cell.